Hi everybody, happy first day of spring. At least I'm releasing this video on the first day of spring 2024. And what I'd like to share with you is how I, as a mathematician, think about the first day of spring. Probably a good idea for us to start with the definition. I went to the almanac.com and found this definition for the first day of spring, the spring equinox. The spring equinox in the northern hemisphere occurs when the sun crosses the celestial equator going south to north. Now, the way they describe it is that if we imagine a plane that goes right through the equator of the Earth, then right now the sun is below that plane and the sun is working its way to being above that plane. And the first day of spring is when the sun, the middle of the sun, is intersecting that plane, right? So it is moving from south to north. Seems like a great definition, but what I did was I took a look at how the daylight changes throughout the course of a year. The college where I teach is in Fremont, California, and I, being a giant nerd, downloaded all of the daylight data for 2024 and used MATLAB to create this graph. Now it's clear the first day of summer is the high point of the graph, the day when there is the most sunlight. The first day of winter is the low point on the graph, the day where there is the least amount of daylight. But what about the first day of spring and the first day of fall? If we look at the first day of spring 2024, which is March 19th, we see that Fremont is going to get 12.1256 hours of daylight. And we can see that the days leading up to the first day of spring are getting longer, and then they will continue to get longer until that first day of summer. But what happens there in the point where it changes from winter to spring? Leading up to the first day of spring, the days are getting longer faster. For example, on February 19th, a full month before the first day of spring, Fremont got an extra 2 minutes and 16 seconds of daylight than they did the day before. And by March 1st, it was up to 2 minutes and 22 seconds of extra daylight. The days were getting longer faster. On the first day of spring, Fremont will get an extra 2 minutes and 25 seconds of daylight than they did the day before. But by the beginning of April, it will be back to 2 minutes and 22 seconds. So on the first day of spring, the days are getting longer at the fastest rate of the year. In calculus, we call this an inflection point. And an inflection point is a place where a graph is changing the fastest. A similar situation will occur on the first day of fall, except we will be looking at the days getting shorter rather than the days getting longer. Another fascinating thing about the first day of spring and the first day of fall occurs when you look at the daylight for different cities. I chose Anchorage, Alaska and Lahaina, Hawaii, because these were the most northern and southern cities that I could find in the United States. And when we overlay these graphs, we see that they intersect on the first day of spring and the first day of fall. I have to admit, I was so surprised when I saw this, but on second glance, it makes sense. It makes sense that they would have to intersect somewhere. Alaska has extremely long days in the summer and extremely short days in the winter, so it would make sense that it had to intersect the daylight from Fremont somewhere. It just was a little surprising to me that it turned out that all of the cities ended up intersecting on the first day of spring and the first day of fall. I couldn't resist, so I looked up the similar data for Brisbane, Australia in the southern hemisphere, and not surprising, we see that the graph is upside down from the graphs for the cities in the northern hemisphere. Right now, their days are getting shorter, and today is the day that it is getting the shortest, the fastest, so this is the first day of fall for those in the southern hemisphere. One last thing to point out is that you probably noticed that the graphs intersect just above 12 hours. Fremont on the first day of spring is going to get 12.1256 hours of daylight. Why is that not 12? The Almanac page had a Q&A part where someone asked the question, are day and night equal on the equinox? And their answer I found fascinating. quite close. In reality, day and night are not exactly equal on the equinox for two reasons. First, daytime begins the moment any part of the sun appears above the horizon and is not finished until the last part of the sun disappears below the horizon. So that would imply that it would be a little bit more than 12 hours. It says if the sun were to shrink to a star-like point and we lived in a world without air, then the spring and fall equinoxes would truly have equal nights and days. Hey, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you're interested in the data or the MATLAB code that I use to create the data, as well as the links to the almanac page where I got the information about the equinox, you can find those all in the video description below. Again, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.